This episode, we're mocking up our brake lines for my brand new Currie rear end, including my Wheelwood setup that has a parking brake caliper, which I'm excited about. Let's see how this goes. Welcome back to Fast Monty's Garage. Today's part 3 of our Currie swap. 2 episodes ago, we took out my GM 10 bolt, which is over 50 years old, if you can imagine. And we're upgrading to this brand new Currie unit, which has 35 spline axles and full floating bearings on the ends. Last episode, we put in spherical bearings and we mocked it up in the GTO to make sure our drive shaft length is perfect. And it is, so go check it out. It's actually really neat. Now, this episode, we're not done mocking up. The reason I'm doing all this mocking up, you might ask, is because you do not want to make all these modifications, paint it, and then figure out something doesn't fit right. So that's why I keep going back and forth and mocking up. So today's episode is purely about taking my brake lines and putting them on here. So I'm sure there's going to be some grinding, some welding, some cutting, all kinds of fun stuff we can do in a shop. But most importantly, we need to mock up the brakes. So I'm going to put the calipers on one side at least, including the Wheelwood parking brake, which is a caliper. Now, the first episode I mentioned that the Wheelwood drum parking brakes I don't like. Half of that reason is because of my foot pedal. It is, I don't think it's made very well, so it doesn't hold a load and it unlocks itself, which is frustrating. So naturally, drum brakes are not as good as calipers, so that's why I'm really looking forward to using this caliper brake. Some of you don't have an option. Like if you're going GM 10 bolt or a standard Ford, you have drum brakes, they will work. It's just frustrating for me in my particular car. So moving forward, if I've ever helped you out in the past, consider hitting that join button, help the channel out, that all proceeds go to buying new parts and making new videos, or get some hats. All those links are below. But let's kick this off by mocking up the calipers so we know where the brake lines have to go before we start welding on our tabs. Got the calipers mounted. I even put the parking caliper on there just to check it out. Looks pretty cool. Can't wait to see that in the car. And on the back side, we have stainless hose, a little short section that will attach to our tab where we have a connector. And I went ahead and put both in because we want to know where we have to connect to. This is basically what we have to work with, and I added this to my 10 bolt. Naturally, this is not normal. You typically have a rubber hose and a molded junction box that divides the lines to go to left or right. And I'm going to try and utilize this whole system, just take it off of here and put it on the Currie rear end. Now, all of you have 10, 12 bolts, have these clips on the side. I'm also going to try and mimic those too. Okay, we got both rear ends lined up roughly the same orientation. And I know a lot of you guys are thinking that I think about way too many things here. The reason is, many of you may or may not know, my car is super low. So whenever I'm adding or changing things, I have to make sure that I'm taking that in mind because, for example, like the axle tube is right near the exhaust. So the exhaust comes up and over, and you guys saw that last episode when I mocked this up. I had to pivot this, change my pinion angle to get away from the exhaust. So when we run the new brake line, I want it to be as low as possible to the axle tube so it doesn't hit the exhaust or stays away from that heat source. Some other things that I just found out. So here's the full assembly right off of the 10 bolt. And this bracket, I believe, came with my aftermarket differential cover because it mounts right to that fastener. But if I recall, and you guys comment on here, I think there's a bracket on a standard cover. I think it's a different shape bracket, different looking. There might be one on the bottom, might be on the top, depending on your car. But this bracket is for that cover, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm going to transfer this whole thing. And if you're wondering, this is an aftermarket kit. Several manufacturers make one, but Currie has one, and I'll post a picture of it. So it's a stainless braid like that. It's got a fastener hole. It doesn't have this bracket, but it has a combination for screwing in your brake lines. The other thing you might be interested in getting is from Currie. They have a bracket that actually uses two of the bolt, the studs here to mount the bracket, and you can put it on any two studs because it's the same, they're all equidistant, and it goes up to, it holds this housing and has a rubber hose to the main connection, which has the correct connector on it. So that's actually really straightforward. You guys can get that. I've not heard any issues with that. I'm just trying to just move what I already used to this rear end. Now, sorry for being long-winded. I just noticed something on here. Do you guys see that? That's like a wear spot. That is a witness mark. And I looked underneath the car and check this out. It's where I put the UMI brace. It was banging on the UMI brace. Great. You know what that means? I have to mock this up again. Oh, well, here's the deal. So what I did was I'm basically looking at this. If it was mounted on the 10 bolt, that's where it was hitting. So it's a certain distance beyond the eyes for the upper mounts. Call it 2 inches, right? I want to make sure that that 2-inch mark, which is basically right here, is not in the way. So this is my new location in theory to put this bracket. And I think what I can do to utilize this bracket is cut this tab to match this height, and then I can locate it right on here and weld it on. Why not? And then this screw is threaded into that bracket, so we can still remove this as need be, but that bracket be welded on. So that's my first plan of attack. I'm just gonna cut this and tape it in place, and then we can talk about the ends. Hey-o. Hey, pretty good. And I noticed when I had it off, it's actually bent the other way. There's a bend right in the middle. I'm gonna go ahead and bend it to match this profile of the housing, and we can probably take more off this edge. Can I get a hell yeah? Of course. Look at that. That is way cleaner, and I can shorten it more. So I'm gonna go ahead and take probably half the distance because that fastener is pretty far away from the housing. So I got a little overzealous and that fastener didn't fit anymore, and all I had to do was reduce the size of the fastener. Now I have gap underneath there. Perfect spot. I got gap in between brake lines. I also have equidistant location for the end of the line where I use my calipers just roughly reference to point. So that's exactly where it needs to be left and right. Now we can talk about the headstones that we have to put down here for our connectors. The connectors look like this. So we have a little headstone, we put this in, we mount it, and now we have a fixed point to run our lines to on both sides. Oh, okay, the fun never stops over here. So your Currie kit actually comes with tombstones, and you can weld them right on wherever you want. And they're perfect for a stock brake line. Typically you have the big 1/2 inch or whatever 5/8 inch fitting. And of course, I do not. Yeah, we have a little problem. My God. I gotta make some new ones. So the good news about making new ones is I can make that hole closer to the axle tube. So I gotta start doing some measuring, figuring out where the center of the hole needs to be. And then luckily I can just trace this on new metal and then cut it out and drill a new hole. There we go. Yeah, luckily I had some stock laying around and I traced 2 tombstones on here. And I think what I'm gonna do, is I'm just taking the worst case scenario diameter of the hex, and then adding about an 1/8 inch from the tube. So let's call it right here. So an 1/8 inch, and there's dead center. I'm eyeballing it. Little eyeball. Yes, we can do some serious math and get that accurate, but to make them the same, I'm now going to take that dot and scribe it over here. Can you guys see that scribe? I can. All right, a little drill press action. All right, it fits. I'll take liberty with this thing and lower this arc. Go to town. Just like they drew it up. Perfect. Okay, one down, one to go. Sorry, I couldn't resist. I had to mount it up because I wanted to verify if my caliper spacing was right, because that affects where our brake lines go. That's where it affects where we put our tombstone or head marker, whatever the hell you want to call those things we just made. And I'm glad I did this. And if you're wondering, this silver disc is a spacer because I need to save money and time to tub the car. That's a little hint for you guys that I made it through this part of the video. But yes, mini tubbing is coming at some point. But in the meantime, I'm going to use a spacer. I'm not going to go crazy with the car until I have the spacers removed. But let me show you something else I found. Okay, I rotated it like 3/4 of the way around so you can see this. This is the lower control arm mount. And I'm glad I checked this out. My gosh, look at this. So this is the bolt that goes through it. I can't get it in this way because of the rotor. I have to go from this direction. And I can't because of right there. I have to take relief so I can get a perfect shot, because you cannot put this in askew, because this bushing is not going to move. It has to be perfectly straight. So, oh my God, I'm glad I did that. Now, I also use an aftermarket tow hook that utilizes both holes, and luckily, the upper hole, I can actually go through into the rotor and perfectly get that bolt in there. So, thank God that one worked, but I do have to take relief here. I'm glad I checked that out, because I would have been pissed if we installed this in the car. All right, let's get back to what we're doing. Let's install those tombstones. So you guys might have noticed that picture I showed with the universal mount for that Currie sells. You can also get bend your own lines. That was the same picture. And that's what I did on the 10 bolt, and I'm just trying to transfer them over. So if you do the bend your own method, go ahead and find a logical location for your tombstone by attaching your fitting to the line and mount it. Do not worry about bending lines until you have that location. And quite literally, I can probably do the same thing, just modify my lines a little more. I'm going to try and get as close as possible, but the moral of the story is you want your endpoints fixed before you start bending lines. Now, let's get the whole thing put together and see how it looks. All right, almost there. I didn't show you guys this. When we mocked this up in the car, I had made a line. See that line? That's where the best radius is for the exhaust. The exhaust comes up over, and the center line of the radius is actually back in here. So it's actually over here, but I wanted to make a reference point, so if the exhaust should come down, it's not going to touch. Like if we accidentally mount it way over here, it can hit. So I'm using the axle tube as center line. So that's my reference point, and there's a good spot right there next to my bracket. So if you're new to welding, something might help you out with these little red magnets that you can do 90-degree mounts or 45-degree mounts, and that's what's holding the tombstone right now. So all I'm going to do is add a tack here, because this is the side that has the biggest hex on the fitting, and I don't want to have a bead get in the way of the hex. So I'm just going to tack up on the corner on each side, remove my magnet clamp, and weld the full seam on the bottom backside. That's the plan, at least. Voila! Yes! Oh yeah, look at that. It is just about perfect. It's even touching right where those clips go. I don't know if I'm going to use them yet, but it's looking great. All I have to do now is after I clean this area up, is I'll just hold it down right there, tack it in place, and we're good. And a great example of hanging out too long when that material is too thin, I burned right through it, but it's a hell of a solid weld. That ain't going nowhere. 3 brackets welded on, middle bracket, 2 end brackets. It is perfect. Now you see how that rattles a little bit? Now some of you, that might be okay. Most people, like me, I'm going to get anal about that, because if you have too much vibration in a fixed line, it will end with probably fracturing or fatigue fracture on where it's mounted. So we don't want that. Now on GM rear ends, there's this little bracket, looks like this, that gets welded on the tube, and then you just push the bracket down and it holds it in place. The alternative to that is a band clamp. You can use a band clamp around there. I did see a really cool one by Mosier. So Mosier Rear Ends makes a plastic ratcheting strap that goes over that. Also an option, but I dig this Currie logo metal. I think I'm going to do a special treatment when I come to paint it. So stay tuned for that episode. So I don't want to cover that. That means I am going to weld these on like this here and on the other side, and then you just push this down and it holds it in place. Here we go. Luckily I have these cool clamps I got for doing exhaust work, and I haven't used them yet because this is going to be a future episode when we do some upgrading to my exhaust, but it's perfect to hold those in place. And it's my first time doing a spot weld. So in theory, you just take your MIG welder and you go right in the middle, 1 extra second, and it should hold it in there, and take the clamp off, do the other one, and we're done. Okay, I forgot to video it, but it worked. So I'm gonna take this off and do the other hole and show you for proof. My God, what an idiot. All right, take 2. Just like that. Oh yeah, I'm a certified spot welder now. I'm just kidding. I'm not certified anything. But it looks completely badass. I mean, look at this thing. All mocked up. Wow. And the parking brake caliper. Like, what a cool add-on. I cannot wait to see that on the car. Wow. Now, I didn't lock these down yet. And speaking of the tabs, the lockdown tabs, they are from Inline Tube. They come as a 3-pack. They're used for GM rear ends, but you can clearly use it for any project you want. But super simple, just spot weld it on there and you're good to go. The reason they're not locked down, we still got to paint. We're gonna go with Cerakote, baby. Oh, you can't see that? There you go, Cerakote. Ceramic based paint. They're well known in the industry, and almost all their product lines are oven cure. I don't have an oven big enough for this thing, so this is the one product they have that's air cure. We're gonna go through it together. Learn from my mistakes. That's how you guys learn faster. So if I've ever helped you out, consider hitting that join button down there, Full Monty Club. I do keep my clothes on, boys and girls, and all proceeds go to help the channel, buy more parts, do more videos, me making more mistakes, you guys learning more. So until next time, build them fast, drive them faster. See ya.